NBC had an article out today about how Donald Trump's campaign is nearly non-existent. He doesn't have very many staffers, and I'll do that story in a little bit. And you can check that out on our YouTube channel and everywhere else that we post. But one of the things that was in the article was about how Hillary Clinton has a much better operation. That when they want to get something in the news, they go to all the different press, they tell their talking points, they get their surrogates out there, and they get their message out. So I thought I got a bit of a strange question when we were talking about superdelegates on CNN over the weekend when I was on Reliable Sources. But one question a pattern does not make. So first, let me show you that question, and then let me show you what happened today. Okay, let's watch the question.
Frankly, this is really exciting to say. For the first time in the history of this country, we're going to have a female nominee of a major party. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian. That's something this country should note and acknowledge. And don't you think it's a shame that the Bernie Sanders talk is going to overshadow what we can all agree is a historic milestone?
I mean, look at the framing you just gave it, right? So I think Hillary Clinton is a completely pro-establishment candidate that will continue this corrupt system where private interests finance their elections.
Historic milestone?
And so, but instead of looking at it as, hey, wait a minute, one guy hasn't taken that corrupting money and the other one has, you frame it as male versus female, and hence put me in a position where I'm forced to say, no, I don't think it would be historic because I think it's the same old establishment, whether it's a male, a female, or anything else. So the framing is all biased.
Now, I appreciate that Reliable Sources was fair enough to have me on, and it was an interesting conversation to have, although I'm not sure how much it related to the superdelegates. So, okay, that was a bit of a curveball, no problem at all. But I was wondering why that came up. And then, interestingly enough, Bernie Sanders gets a question from New York Times reporter Yamiche Alcindor. Listen to that question from just recently.
What do you say to women who say that you staying in the race? What do you say to women who say that you staying in the race is sexist because it's standing in the way of what could be the first female president?
Is that a serious question?
Yes, it is a serious question.
That any woman who is running for president, anyone who opposes your question implies that any woman, that any person, any woman who is running for president is by definition the best candidate. So any woman who runs.
But you would also have
to say that it is sexist that any. So if Hillary Clinton runs for president, is your point that it is sexist for any man to oppose her?
No, my point is that if she has more delegates than you tomorrow.
Well, that's another point. Then that is not. Well, I don't think it is sexist.
Okay, wait a minute now. That same talking point appears on CNN and New York Times. And we know that there's a Clinton PR machine that constantly is lobbying the press. Hey, you should ask this question. This is a very important question. You should ask this question, okay? So now all of a sudden, right back to back, right next to each other, is it sexist to not step aside if Hillary Clinton has more pledged delegates? Now, wait a minute. As Bernie Sanders pointed out, the conversation around pledged delegates and superdelegates is an interesting one, but wholly distinct from the issue of whether running against Hillary Clinton is sexist. On the core of that issue, that is a preposterous question, because based on that ideology, well, shouldn't you never run against Hillary Clinton? I mean, it'd be sexist to oppose the person who could be the first female nominee of a major party. How dare you run against her and then block this important moment? By the way, when they posed similar questions, if they did, I believe I remember they did in 2008, about Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton, meaning, hey, Hillary Clinton, how could you oppose Barack Obama, who would be the historic first black president of the United States? I'm running against them. What do you want me to do? You just step down because of racial or gender issues? So it is a preposterous question. And if you continue that logic out, well, Carly Fiorina could have been the historic first female nominee of a major party in America. Why didn't other Republicans just drop out? That was awfully sexist of them. In fact, why didn't Bernie Sanders drop out preemptively just in case Carly Fiorina could be the first female president? Because he doesn't agree with her. Just because she's a female doesn't mean that it helps women's rights or any of the substantive policy issues. But I think what's more important is not the bizarreness of the charge, but the fact that it comes at the same time. Now, look, that's just two cases. If there are more, that'll be even more interesting. Maybe it's a coincidence, but what I'm telling you right now, based on what I know and based on what is reported, is that oftentimes it is not a coincidence. And it certainly was not a coincidence when every single media organization talked about how chairs were thrown in the Nevada caucus, the convention, I should say, about the caucus, and that there was violence. There was no video, no evidence of chairs being thrown or violence. There were no arrests, but yet all the media had that story and all of them ran with it. Now, where did they get that from? Well, the Hillary Clinton team has an attack machine. And by the way, they have now largely shifted it over to Donald Trump, and he is not reacting well to those attacks. And you might enjoy that attack machine when it's against a Republican, but understand the process behind it and understand that these questions like, isn't it sexist to run against Hillary Clinton, don't pop out of thin air, coincidentally at the same time at several different media organizations. It is part of a coordinated attack by the Clinton team oftentimes. Now, in this case, there are no internal memos or emails yet, so we can reserve judgment, but it is a curious coincidence.